Welcome back to the Explainer. So, you know that feeling when you pour your absolute heart and soul into a project, only to suddenly find your name mysteriously missing from the final product? Well, today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating case study about office dynamics, technical loopholes, and accountability. We're looking at the story of how a completely mundane, totally boring corporate shared drive shortcut became the center of a quiet, calculated workplace cover-up. Seriously, if you have ever had your hard work co-opted, you are going to want to pay close attention to this one.
Okay, let's dive right into this with a brilliant quote from strategy lead Maya Carter. She said, "The dangerous documents never look dangerous first." Now, in the organizational culture we're looking at today, leadership had just made this massive public push to reform their systems and make sure work was credited correctly. But as we all know, toxic habits rarely just disappear overnight, right? They just adapt. In this specific case, there was a real slow burn tension building up simply because everyday, boring administrative details were being used to hide stolen credit, literally right under everyone's noses.
So what exactly was the threat here? Well, it was something called the ownership loophole. This is a system vulnerability where a file shortcut completely bypasses the standard owner field. Think about it like a giant puzzle with a missing piece. While the original file might clearly have your name on it, creating a shortcut of that exact same file somehow strips the metadata. And that allows users to silently erase credit and accountability. It's literally the perfect example of how old toxic habits survive in supposedly new systems. They just find quiet technical exceptions that nobody bothers to monitor. Let's look at Part 1, the quiet workplace loophole.
When this missing accountability was first noticed on a major project, the company's initial reaction was definitely not to investigate. Nope, they tried to brush it off as just a harmless technical glitch. But this brilliantly illustrates the massive divide between management spin and what was actually happening to an operations coordinator named Sofia Lane. Take a look here. On the left, we've got the corporate excuses. Leadership was throwing around buzzwords like alignment, context, efficiency, and team outcome. But on the right, that's the technical reality. What was actually happening was credit erasure, missing names, and altered metadata. It's basically the emotional gaslighting of corporate buzzwords trying to mask the cold, hard reality of stolen work.
Moving on to Part 2, reading the skipped details.
You see, the pushback against this cover-up didn't start with some dramatic shouting match in a boardroom. It started because Sofia Lane decided to sit down and literally just read the small print, the exact administrative details that senior leadership desperately wanted everyone to ignore. She started asking what her team ended up calling the uncomfortable questions. She didn't buy the process issue excuse for a second. Instead, she asked, what exactly changed in this file? Who changed it? Who approved the change? And most importantly, who gained power when it changed? By asking these super specific, targeted questions, she completely dismantled the polished explanation that this was all just an innocent oversight.
Which brings us to Part 3, background work leaves records. Okay, this is where the investigation gets really good. Executive Assistant Nina Ross proved that invisible work always sees everything. A cover-up just cannot hide in a vacuum, right? Nina brought what she calls the foreground records of background work. She pulled the receipts. We're talking calendar booking exports, saved email drafts, forwarding trails, and meeting notes. All these background records provided the undeniable context that proved the missing name on that shortcut was a deliberate, calculated action, absolutely not a system glitch. Part 4, the raw audit sequence. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how IT audit specialist Jordan Price proved that the truth isn't some dramatic Hollywood-style computer hack. The truth is actually found in a clinical, unfeeling digital sequence. Maya Carter built out this proof map to stack up the undeniable evidence of a deliberate pattern. Look at the top row. The original file is owned by Sofia Lane, there are no missing approvals, and nobody is negatively affected. But look at the next row. The drive shortcut suddenly has a blank owner, a completely bypassed approvals, and it directly affects Sofia. Finally, that third row traces the entire action to a service account owned by a shadow of the old toxic culture, a manager named Adrian. And Jordan's raw metadata export gave them the exact chronological sequence. Check this out. At 8 a.m., the original owner field was changed. By 9:15 a.m., the file timestamp mysteriously moved. At 10:30 a.m., the access path was artificially narrowed to essentially lock people out. And finally, at 11:45 a.m., that shortcut was definitively traced right back to Adrian's old service account. The data is entirely clinical, and it thoroughly, completely destroys any lingering corporate excuses. Part 5, who benefits from silence? Shifting from the how of this investigation to the why, analyst Aisha Morgan completely stopped the room with one incredibly powerful question. Who benefits if this stays classified as harmless?
Take a second and let that sink in. Office lies survive when the harm is kept vague and abstract, but they collapse the absolute moment the benefit becomes specific and attached to a real person.
So when they got caught, the old culture immediately pushed for what we call the private fix. You know the drill. Quiet emails, gently revised notes, a polite little apology behind closed doors. But Maya Carter and independent board member Elise Warren completely refused to play along. A private fix just leaves future employees exposed to the exact same trap. Instead, they demanded this systemic repair. That means a public correction permanently written into the workflow that immediately restores the stolen name. Ultimately, a workplace has to protect its people, not its power.
And finally, Part 6, Workflow Built for Protection. Let's move to how this actually builds a better system to ensure this specific brand of credit theft could literally never happen again. The committee replaced vague leadership intentions with concrete, trackable verbs. Check out the new accountability workflow. Step 1, preserve the altered shortcut as evidence. Step 2, attach the public reason code right to it. Step 3, directly notify the affected employee. And Step 4, log the public correction. No more hiding in the shadows.
And this right here is the final empowering rule that restored Sofia's name and closed the ownership loophole for good. The repair step: shortcuts must inherit the exact same accountability and owner fields as the original documents. It's not about revenge at all, it's just about good architecture. If the old culture used a process exception to erase people, the new culture uses process to protect them before the next theft can even begin.
I really want to end our explainer today with this incredibly powerful takeaway. A workplace becomes safer when names cannot be quietly removed and records cannot be politely ignored. Think about your own workplace for a second. How does your system remember or forget who actually does the heavy lifting? Does your workflow protect your effort, or does it leave a loophole for your name to be quietly erased? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep asking those uncomfortable questions. And whatever you do, keep checking the metadata.